Good afternoon and welcome to the March 2nd regular meeting of Council with our louder microphones. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish nations and their traditional territories upon which we gather with gratitude. And before we start, the consent agenda, I need a mover and a seconder for all three parts of the consent agenda. Councillor Wilson and seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Correspondence. We have one piece of correspondence on the agenda. It's from BC Housing, requests for reconsideration of Handmade for Hope. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation to receive. Councillor Wilson and seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion on that part? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to introduce the motion of acceptance for the Handmade for Hope program.
Hold on for a second. We've got to do this one because it's a motion to receive, and then once we do, then you can come into your part. All right. So, all those in favor of receiving? Opposed? It's carried. Now, you can have your...
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're welcome.
I want to introduce the motion of acceptance for the Handmade for Hope program, provided that the program document reads that the participants are residents of Orchid Place supportive housing exclusively, and that the program is not for participants from other island crisis care supportive housing or other facilities.
I need a seconder. Councillor O'Brien, any discussion on this? You have first rights on this one? No? All right. Okay. Councillor Fraz.
Okay, I have a question through staff, through the mayor. With this reconsideration coming back, previously at our last meeting, we had given them approval to use the spaces there for different purposes, including crafts, similar like this program. I'm wondering if they're requiring our approval to run this proposal now that we've previously given them approval to use that space. We had given a motion that they could use that space for different activities and so on. So I'm just curious as to why this wouldn't be in line with.
Go ahead, because I'm not remembering that approval. So.
Yeah. If I may, Your Worship, I don't believe we've given any formal approval, although there has been some discussions about different uses. The lease with BC Housing does say that a council resolution is required for the use of that space. And as far as I'm aware, which we can double check, we have not approved anything. It was deferred at one point, and then I believe some councillors may have met with the residents, or sorry, the operators. But as far as I'm aware, and we can double check, we don't have anything approving the use at this time.
Okay, I was under the impression that we had written a letter and we had given them approval for use of that space for things like gym equipment, hobbies, arts and crafts and so on. That was, well, they were suggested ideas, but we were allowing use of that space.
They've always had the right to use that space. It's when it goes outside of the use of the residences, I think where we ran into the roadblock back in January when we turned it down. So I think we're okay. I think, in fact, I know we're okay on this one. Go ahead, one more.
I guess what I'm asking for then is if we have previously given them approval, how is this different? And maybe we just need some clarification then if the motion that we passed, if it was for using the space or not, because I'm under the impression that they've already been granted the use for that space.
I'll check it, but my understanding is that we did give, in fact, suggestions for use of this space, but we've never given them a formal approval for what they're asking for here. In fact, we turned it down, if I'm not mistaken. And that was the part that they're coming back and asking for a reconsideration. Other than that, there's been no, to my knowledge, but we'll reconfirm it again tomorrow when we check it.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Fast, I'm trying to double check with staff at the moment, but I believe it was the November meeting of council where it was, there we go, where we rejected the proposal as submitted. We did indicate approval of hobby, fitness, exercise rooms, or diverse activities, provided that was not used for any business use or volunteers were only permitted to use on-site parking spaces, and that it was for current residents of Orca Place only. So I think this motion today is for the Handmade for Hope proposal, which is more similar, I suppose, to a not-for-profit business than what was originally approved by council.
Okay, so that brings me back to my original question, then. If we have already approved the space to be used for hobbies and crafts and so on, and this program, as they're saying here, is only for use of Orca Place residents, and that was similar to what we asked for,
Yep.
How is this any different than approval that we've already granted them?
It looks like an expanded.
I'll be with you in a second, Councillor O'Brien. What we're doing is expanding what we've allowed, by putting this on, expanding what we've allowed to be used in there. So if this doesn't work, they could always go back to using it for gym equipment and all the other things that were approved back in November for recommendations of use. But at this point in time, I don't think that they are against each other as far as the use. They're just in addition to is more of what we're doing. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just on the same subject, I believe that what we have here today is the pilot program proposal that we have for Orca Place anyways, and I think that's what we're actually being asked to give approval for at this particular time. So to clarify, I believe that we did, it was a suggestion that in the meantime that they could use the effective rooms anyways for other alternatives, but at the same time we rejected the proposal for Handmade for Hope. So at this time what we're here today is just to consider the request for the pilot program proposal as proposed. And I would like to, while I have the mic here anyways, just say I've read through it over and over again, and I certainly approve of Councillor Wilson's amendment as such anyways to the proposal as discussed, but I also like to convey my appreciation anyways for the parties getting together and to discuss anyways and to examine any questions that may have come up on this and to allay any fears that may have been presented originally. So I thank him for that, and I will be supporting this proposal.
Okay, is there anybody else for the first time coming around? Councillor Wilson. Okay, anybody else wish to speak to the matter? All right, then. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize your hand up there.
Okay, so my thoughts, and just want to share, since we've already made a decision that that allows for what they're proposing here, I don't see anything that goes against it. As far as it being a reconsideration, I think what they're bringing forward here is quite different than what they had brought forward in the past. As far as it being a business side of it, they're looking at it as a pilot program. So I think it falls in line with what we've already approved previously. With that part of it, I don't have the same concerns I've had in the past, but I don't know if it's necessary for the approval that they're seeking here. So I thought I wanted to share that with council so you recognize, like, for me, it's kind of either or, but I'm under the understanding that they've already been granted this approval.
Thank you, Your Worship. The motion I'm making is just to clarify that this is for Orca Place residents only, and that's not in the proposal. It says participants, so the motion is, or the proposal is fine for me. It's just clarifying who it's for. Basically, that's what the motion's about. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. That was the problem initially, was the fact that they wanted to make it a commercial thing and they wanted to be able to bring people from other areas into the building. So I think this new motion clarifies the fact that it's got to just be used from the people inside the building. Thanks.
Any other comments? All right, then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? I take note that Councillor Frass has voted in opposition. Thank you. It has passed. All right. Reports. Mrs. Weeks, could you please give us the background on the issue regarding the 2020 Community Park Mobile Food Service License Renewal? Wow.
Did you miss one?
Pardon?
You missed the HRVA?
Oh, sorry. I skipped pages here. My apologies. Mrs. Keeler gets that one. Please, if you give us the background on the issue regarding new hazard, risk, and vulnerability analysis.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is for information only for council. If council would like to give further direction, that is, of course, at their behest. Staff have been working with the emergency staff at the Regional District of Nanaimo and the town of Qualicum Beach for many years. And one of the items that was identified as a gap probably about 6 years ago was that the hazard, risk, and vulnerability analysis was out of date and wasn't cohesive across the region. So over the last couple of years, they've been working together, the emergency program coordinators, with an expert consultant, and they have provided the HRVA study. So this is something that will inform the emergency programs for the region moving forward, and it allows a consistent base and consistent database, I guess, to work from when preparing for things. We call them contingency plans, but essentially we're basically all looking at the same information across the region and can collaborate on providing effective response, mitigation, and recovery from the more likely events that are going to happen perhaps in the region. And recommendations are just to receive at this point.
I need a mover and a seconder to receive the information. Councillor Greer, and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. All right, now you get to go. Mrs. Weeks.
Thank you. This is a follow-up to the report from the February 19th Council agenda, as the report was referred back to staff. Staff spoke with the Chamber's Executive Director to address the concerns raised by Council, and these are noted in the supplemental information attached in your agenda package. And the recommendation is as per the Council agenda.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. We're going to read them one at a time. So for point number 1, I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Fraz, and seconded by Councillor Patterson, that the report manager be received. All those in, any discussion first off, I should ask? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Point number 2, I believe Councillor Fraz has an addition to that.
Yeah, I want to move number 2 here with an amendment that would read, I'd like to add a clause that includes penalties for failing to abide by conditions similar to the bylaw fines of $150 per offense that could be applied by the corporate officer upon confirmation that the license has been breached.
Okay, so that's moved. I need a seconder for this. Councillor Greer. Discussion? Councillor Fraz.
Just speak to the amendment here. I appreciate that staff has met with the Chamber to go over those concerns. I have every confidence that they're going to abide by the lease agreement. I think they've done a really good job too in the past as far as reaching our high standards that we set out. I just think that any agreement should have penalties in place. It's the same reason why we have bylaws, and bylaw offense is out there. It was one of the things I saw that was perhaps lacking that I think is a positive addition.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to the matter? All right, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Point number 3, I need a mover and a seconder that the monthly rental rate of $6,500 plus applicable taxes and so on. Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? Councillor Greer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just wondering, the $136.50, which you have down for inflation, is that going to cover all the new electrical wire and the paint and so on that's mentioned? It doesn't cover that? I think that should be covered somehow. I don't think we should pick up that tab without it going back to the people who are renting the pads.
I don't see the discussion in here at all about the pads and that. It's in the staff report.
It's in the report, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to need a separate motion to address that.
Okay.
All right, but for this right now, this is the base for the rental. Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment to Councillor Greer. I noticed that those requests appeared on Schedule 1, which included the electrical and the water connections and so forth, and staff's recommendation has recommended not to provide those services.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councillor Greer?
I think if we're going to comply with what they require, we're going to need the extra services. I don't know why we're going to avoid that.
Okay, just a second. It's that issue is being brought up separately. It's not being brought up under this discussion at all. So, Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question through to CEO Keller. Wondered if we talked a little bit about the third pad rental, and I'm wondering if does that cover some of these extra costs by putting that in? How is that administered? I wasn't quite 100% sure of how that worked. Thank you.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Chandler. So the original lease or license with the chamber was only for 2. And then when the previous council approved a third, we actually prorated that and charged extra so that all 3 trucks were essentially paying their way. The additional requests for upgrades are not part of the current agreement and not part of the current fee. But it is my understanding that the chamber has offered to cost share on some of those, as is outlined in the memo. But if council wishes to discuss those or provide direction, we would recommend doing so after this motion has been considered.
Councillor Chandler.
Just follow up, if I may, the mayor through to CEO Keller. So does that mean that the 2 pads, turning into 3 pads is the same charge at that point? Or you talk about it being prorated, so each truck is just charged differently through the chamber? Or do we add a fee on for that third truck? Thank you.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Chandler, the city does not play a role in how the trucks are paid. We pay, or we negotiate the license with the chamber, and the chamber pays us for the 3 pads, essentially. I assume even if they're empty, they still pay us the same monthly amount. So we're not really privy to how it works with the food trucks, but since, I guess, the last 2 years, we've had 3, and they've been charged for 3, regardless of whether they fill them or not.
And Councillor Frass?
Just one further question here regarding September. It mentions how there's an option to extend to September, and the rental rates and additional conditions are negotiated between the city and the licensee. How does that, there is no description as to what September's charged. I know there's a little bit of leniency. Are they paying a day rental rate at that point, or typically what's the breakdown of it?
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Frass, I believe at this point we negotiated that they would not have to pay for September. Sometimes September can be wonderful and sunny, and other times it can be like winter. So my understanding, and I can confirm perhaps with the manager of administration, they did not pay a fee after the long weekend in September, Labor Day weekend.
Were the pads used during that time in September? I guess my concern would be that if they're going to be used, then perhaps we should have something in there to address that. If they're being used, I'd imagine the food trucks are being charged for it. I could be wrong. I don't know how their agreements are, but I'd imagine that if they're being used, they're being charged.
In following with protocol, I'm not allowed to draw in the audience into the conversation, but I certainly can read body language, and I'm getting that they did not use the pads in September.
Okay, while they weren't used there was if that's in fact the case, there is a request that they are looking to be using the pads year-round, so there does be some desire to go that direction, and I guess I'll be at some point looking for some kind of form to address that.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Frass, if council is willing to allow that, we can certainly work with the chamber and come back to council with some options. Could be a daily rate, prorated based on the time of year, or it could be a percentage of sales or something along those lines. There's a few different options we can bring back.
Go ahead, one more.
I'll just make my suggestion that I think a daily rate would be an appropriate way to address it for off-season.
Okay, point number 3. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Point number 4, I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Greer. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Councillor Wilson, would you like to introduce a motion regarding the following topic on Committee of the Whole on Economic Development?
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to introduce a motion that Council hold a Committee of the Whole in a few months to discuss economic development pertaining to downtown revitalization, traffic, transportation, landscaping, tree buffer options that support the beautification, economic growth, and walkability of the downtown core.
Am I taking that be in your motion? It is. I need a seconder. Councillor Chandler, discussion. Councillor Wilson, you have first option.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I feel that this is an important topic that we really need to move towards downtown revitalization, and having a Committee of the Whole, as per our last Committee of the Whole meeting, was quite successful. So I think that this would be a good option to hold one soon. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments? Councillor Chandler?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I really support this. I believe that the more we can do for the downtown and revitalize, get more people down there, more furniture outside on patios wherever possible, more signage and things like that to really attract people, decorations, lights, anything we could do for street lighting, and the occasional food truck wouldn't be a bad thing down there either. So that's what I'd love to see, and I really think that that's all part of a big discussion. And I appreciate that this is being brought forward by Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just to comment further, some of this we have already had the preliminary discussions regarding traffic and so forth that may overlap this, but I really believe that it's probably a good idea if we can put it all together. And now that we have some, like the lighting and so forth is already in play anyways with what we're doing, what you're proposing here, but maybe we could build on that. And I think that this is probably a good opportunity now that we know what we've already approved in budget, that I think it's probably a good idea that we all put our heads together and see what we can come up with. I approve this. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just a comment, as this is near and dear to my heart, and that as well. And this week we also meet with the Parksville Downtown Business Association, so I think it's very much a good opportunity, showing that we're working with them and other businesses and the city of Parksville for some of the things that have been mentioned as beautification and traffic and that. And as I've always said, I think that partnerships and working with other groups makes it work better than just one moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'm going to step into this for a minute. Although I understand Councillor Wilson's point to be made here with the committee of the whole meeting, the problem is that every one of those issues, there's a master plan sitting in my office that has been worked on, and then it goes back to 2008 or 2009 and moves on forward. Every one of those points has been taken and talked to death, has cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars in staff time and consultants and everything else. And unfortunately, you haven't seen one of those take place. We haven't seen anything change in any of those areas. Not that I wouldn't like to. I think it's a magnificent idea if we can do it. But just to have the conversation for the sake of having the conversation is something that we could be probably using our time better in other areas where we are seeing some success. And so I just caution that this is almost second cousin to an OCP review of the downtown core, and I'm not sure that it's not going to achieve anything. I mean, it's going to be nice, it's going to go in a report, and it's going to look good, and we're all going to talk about it, and not one thing will happen from this, because not one thing has happened from any of those master plans that have been put in place since 2008 or whatever it was. I hope I'm wrong, and I know by the looks of the way it's going around the table that I'm going to be voted down on this, but I'm just expressing my opinion here that it's not something that's going to be jumping out at us, and unfortunately, as much as I support the concept, I don't see it happening. Thank you. Councillor Wilson, you get the last shot at this. And Councillor Greer, you're going to get the second last shot.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the whole point of discussion is that things get moving, get resolved, get happening, and I hope you're wrong. I know that my intent is that some of those master plans that were studied can perhaps be brought forward by all of our great minds and discussed, and who knows? I'm hopeful. Thank you.
Then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to agree with the mayor on this one. We've been involved in this situation for the last 12 years. And the item that I think is the most important was the street on 19A, to make it into a one-way direction. And that, of course, if you recall, the other way getting out of town was up through Jensen, the Jensen extension, which has now got the Greenway in it. And I think there's a possibility that we should discuss that situation, and maybe that I would be interested in redoing and relooking at that. I think that's very important for the near future. Might not happen in our term, but in the long term, I think we have to do something with 19A, and I think we have to keep the Jensen extension, the ability to put a one-way street through to McVicker on that area. But I think that's very important going forward in the future. As they say, it might not happen in the next 2 or 3 years, but down the road, we're going to have a way in town that's not so congested and a way back out. So that would be worth discussion. The rest, I think we've talked it to death as well. Thanks.
Councillor Wilson. O'Brien. Sorry, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just further on this, I believe, if I understand Councillor Wilson's motion here, I believe it would be helpful with what the mayor has suggested with all the other consultant reports, if we have them sitting on the shelf and we paid a lot of money to get them. I think maybe if we could bring those forward in advance of the committee of the whole, so that the council can actually have those documents in front of us, so we can have a educated discussion. It's probably got a lot of information in it that we could use. I guess the negative side is nothing has happened with those consultation reports up until this time. I think maybe if we have another look at it and then take it together with where we are at this date and time, that maybe we can put something together and we can make it happen instead of just talking it to death. So I understand totally what you're saying. I get it. It has been talked to death. Well, I think at this point, I believe Councillor Wilson's attempt here is to take the talking to and turn it into some action, which I support.
Thank you. Considering we have a town hall coming up on community safety, I'm just looking for what kind of time frame we would be looking to put on a committee of the whole in this regard. So maybe we could work out some details. My thoughts are that it's not in the immediate future, but perhaps in the fall, or even perhaps to the spring or after the new year. But just looking for maybe some opinion on that. From whoever wants to pipe in with some idea.
Councillor Wilson, and then I'll go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there isn't a hurry, as I said in my motion, perhaps the next few months, but it would be nice to have it before the fall, I think, if we can fit it in.
Thank you. And my comment is to Councillor Fraz's question, and it's a very valid one. 2 points. First off, timeline. Secondly, staff costs. It's nice to say we're going to have a committee of the whole, but this is going to absorb a ton of staff time, just gathering up the information, bringing stuff, answering the 7 kabillion questions that are going to be asked about it, and so on. It's going to take us a lot of staff time. Our staff are up to their proverbial backsides in alligators right now, and I'm not sure that this is the right time. If you said to me, if we can postpone this, and I'm kind of picking up a little bit on what Councillor Fraz is saying, if we postpone this and we put it in the budget for 2021, where we can in the spring have this and have a discussion and make it as part of our strategic plan, perhaps that might be where there's some common sense here. But to start tying up our staff, to start tying up the money for consultants, if there is going to be any, and for us as well. We've got a lot of things on the go here over the next little while. I just caution that it's, we started out last year after we had the mayor's roundtable. The mayor's roundtable, after it was done, we all sat here and agreed that we would take the 5 principles and we would work on those 5 principles, and that would be our total focus. And yes, we can say that some of these things can be massaged into our some of those principles, but at the end of the day, we're taking our eye off the ball of these 5 and moving on to something a little bit different. And I just caution that we don't get carried away chasing that situation instead of the other things that we're looking at. Just my thought, and as I said, I'm willing to wait until next year for it, but at this year, I can't see it. So, any other comments? Councillor Fraz and then Councillor O'Brien.
I just want to echo a little bit of what he was saying there, and that was kind of what I was, direction I was leaning and suggesting was that it's not something to come up immediately. Like say we do have a town hall and community safety, which is a big item. We're looking at the pool right now, so we're working on the recreational part of it. I think it's a great idea, but when you were talking about gathering those master plans, we're going to be including things like the PDBA, reaching out to businesses and gathering a lot of people. I do think this is a little bit more down the road type item. I'd like to see it supported, but I'd like some agreement as to when it would be, and I do think the fall would perhaps be the soonest time. I do think into the new year is probably the more appropriate time.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just noticed the town hall we're scheduled for March 23rd for the town hall meeting, which is great. I would be in favor of delaying this to the fall of 2020 and having us work on it at that time. And maybe the thing is that the committee of the whole can be kept just with the information that we have all of these consultants' reports by delaying it that far, then maybe council members would have a chance to study it. We have lots of time before the fall. The only reason I would like to get it done this year, because I know how slow things move. And the thing is that we gotta get things rolling for it to happen before our term is expired. So I think fall would be great, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. I think that the fall is great, obviously. I think this year would be great for us all to spend a little time revitalizing the downtown ourselves. If we all go down there, it's going to be revitalized. It's going to be all of us and family, and let's spend some time down there and let's see what's going on in the summertime. You know, I think the other thing that we could look at is really work hard to work in conjunction with the PDBA and support them in their efforts to come up with different events and things like that. And let's make something of the downtown as best we can this year. And I agree, next year would, you know, start it in September and work towards something next year to do something really special down there. Thank you.
Just one last comment from me. And I appreciate the flexibility everybody has expressed on this by delaying it or proposing to delay it till the fall. The problem we've got is it's not in our budget right now, and I think what we need to do is push it, if nothing else, just a little bit further. And I hate to do that, because I do agree with most of these things, and you know, I agree with Councillor Chandler's idea of, you know, all of us taking a part in you know, being downtown. In fact, I'm moving downtown, so I'm all in favor of it. But I think we need to push this just a little bit more if we can, so that we can get it into next year's budget. And that's really important, that we can, and then we can do it properly instead of piecemeal. Or the other alternative is to pick one item out of that. For example, traffic. I know that you have to start somewhere. So pick one item and say, let's go at that one, and then see what we come up with, and then go to the next one after we've got the idea about traffic. Then we know, if traffic's going this way, then we can put picnic tables here, or whatever the case may be. But I think pick one of these areas, and then it becomes more workable, if you will. I see Councillor Wilson's hand up.
I am wrecking the place. Thank you, Your Worship. So the point of having a discussion about the topic is keeping it more general rather than breaking it down into pieces, because you need an overall discussion, a bigger picture, if you will, and then break it down. So my intent with this wasn't so that we were necessarily going to find solutions, but that we open the door to discussion, to different ideas and thoughts, as a big picture as to how we might want to see downtown Parksville now. And that does include transportation, traffic flow, beautification, downtown revitalization under the umbrella of economic development. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I agree with Councillor Wilson's attempt to actually show some vision. I think it's, and to be put all together, it shows more vision, and anyways, to have a guiding principle of what we can do for the city of Parksville. So I like that. But in the interest of keeping, being flexible here, instead of having this motion perhaps die right now, I would be interested in, let's pushing it back to when it would be acceptable. To if we can have that discussion. If we say fall, you know, like, what do we call fall? I call fall October. If you're suggesting, Mr. Mayor, that maybe January would be a better idea to keep this on the table, keep it rolling, I would certainly be willing to move into that if we can come to a date, just so it doesn't die. Just being whatever you feel. Oh, okay, yeah, good point, Councillor Frass. So if at this time, if I could make a friendly amendment to that motion, it would be perhaps a way that we can come to a conclusion on this. I would like to propose the exact same wording as Councillor Wilson's, and only adding a friendly amendment to that motion to suggest that The committee of the whole meeting would happen late in January 2021.
Motion, Councillor Wilson has to agree, and the seconder has to agree. Who is? Pardon me? Oh, or Councillor Chandler. So the two of them have to agree to make that a friendly motion.
I agree with that.
Okay, then you have your, so now we have all of that to be done in January 2021. I'm going to call the question. Thank you. All those in favor? Good work. Thank you, folks. Just a couple of real quick motions, I would think. I'm hoping anyways, and I'll make the motions. First one is that staff be directed to provide 3 metal garbage cans with the City of Parksville logo and design to the Parksville and District Historical Society to place on their property for public use with no obligation for city staff to remove the garbage, and that the necessary funds be taken from the council contingency. I need a seconder on that. Councillor Chandler. Just to start this off, they're going through a fairly extensive landscaping at the Historical Society property, and they were looking for something for garbage pickup, and I suggested that it would be very nice to have the ones with the Parksville logo cut out in the side and everything, just to be filled up. They were ecstatically happy about that. So that was the whole purpose of this. If there's any other comments, Councillor Fraz?
I have a question to staff through the mayor. Hope it's an obvious question here. Would be how much would this cost, and how much is in the council contingency?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Frass. Council contingency renews every January, so it's $25,000 to begin with. I'm aware of about just under $3,000 that have been allocated for device reimbursal. And then other councillors, of course, might be able to access that. And the garbage cans, we do have different options, but they're on average about $500 each.
Just to follow up with that, so out of the council contingency, if I'm not mistaken, we had also addressed the Soft Shores exhibits, which we allocated some money, a few $1,000s towards, as well when we talked about the Remembrance Day banners. I believe that was out of the council contingency. And so with those costs considered in there, you say about $500 per can, so $1,500 is what we're looking for. I'm just trying to get an idea of how much we have remaining if we were to fulfill all those prior commitments.
The banners were about $12,000 is what we're looking at, so that'll give you an idea. And then you can do the 3,500 and 1,500 for there, so that, you know, there's 5,000, so $17,000 in total at this point. Yeah, 18,000. We're still under the $20,000 mark on it. Good question. So, yes.
You can speak to this, but we're trying to cost share on the banners.
Yes, and that's true. The banners right now, the Legion has approved that they wanted to contribute some money, $3,000 towards that, so that would bring that contingency allocation down even further. So, any other questions? They're good ones. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm sorry, could you please clarify how much is in our contingency?
25,000, and then we're somewhere around, it's going to be about somewhere around $18,000 is what we just did the calculation on, just off the top of our heads on it. So we've still got some money left over.
So we have 18,000 left over?
No, we've used $18,000.
You've used 18. We're just at the allocated?
Yes.
Okay, and we're just now the end of February, beginning of March. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor? Pardon me? Oh, who had a question? Councillor Patterson, did you have a question? Okay. Councillor Praz?
I just had one more question then regarding 3 cans for the grounds there. Curious with staff, how many garbage cans do we typically put out for certain areas? Like I'm wondering how this number came about for 3 cans. Is maybe 2 cans more appropriate, or is it just do we have the locations picked out where they want the cans to go already, or are we just gonna?
It would be up to them where they want to put the cans on their grounds.
Was this a request for them to have 3 cans?
No, it was just a suggestion that it went anywhere. They would be happy if we gave them 1 can, I'm sure, but it was, they just asked if we could provide it. So the number 3 was derived at in the conversation.
And I assume if the possibility, if they find 3 cans is more than they need, that they could return it. If
And
it's
they,
on.
I'm sure they would.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move this right along. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Here's another one of my my motions that I'm thinking probably won't take long. But I would like to make the recommendation that staff be directed to prepare design and location options for the Parksville Tourism Selfie Bench and provide recommendations to council on budget and timelines for installation. So the concept here is a bench with the name Parksville on behind and set in a spot where you can get a nice picture of the landscape somewhere in our park so people can take their pictures. We thought it was a great idea. It was very novel. And then when we started to look, Mrs. Tardif and I started to look on the internet. There's hundreds and hundreds of these things all around and people taking pictures. We just thought it would be a nice touch to have our name there for pictures being taken along the beach. And they wouldn't be any different than our bench except for the fact that it would have Parksville at name somehow implemented in it in some way of doing selfies. And we don't know what those are until we see what staff comes up with on it. So I need a seconder for the motion first. Are you seconding the motion? All right. So Councillor Wilson, now please feel free.
Thank you, Your Worship. So because we're taxing staff with many other things, I'm just wondering perhaps this might be something we delay until budget or perhaps the new year when we are discussing things like adding workload to staff. Thank you.
It's a very, very valid point. And I have no problems with waiting until being available for next year at this time. So I'm okay with that if we want to wait till next year. It's up to us. Councillor Chandler and then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think I kind of feel the same way. I think we've got a 75th anniversary coming up here for Parksville. We're going to be pretty busy. We're going to have a lot of notoriety going on here. I think we can encourage selfies in any way, shape, or form. I think they're just going to happen anyways, but I like the idea. I think it's really novel, and it's a great way to push the Parksville name. So if it was really inexpensive and quick and easy to put together, I think it'd be a great idea to slam it together for the 75th. But if there's going to be a lot of cost to it, then maybe we just shove it over because that has already cost us a lot, the event itself, and it will bring a lot to the city too. So I'm not saying that won't be worthwhile, but in reality, it would be great to see it if it's something very cheap and easy. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too went online anyways to see what a selfie bench actually looked like. I was impressed very much with the city of Ottawa had one with a very large Ottawa sign right behind it, so it was clear that when the selfies were taken that you were indeed in Ottawa. So I think it would be a big hit for our tourism. I agree with Councillor Chandler. But my thoughts are if we want to get this happening soon, that it would totally be at the whim of our staff, anyways, when they feel it's appropriate that they have the time to do it. And I was thinking, after looking at the Ottawa one, that hopefully our new sign shop might make that job a little easier and perhaps utilizing a bench that we already have in place and just getting a Parksville logo behind behind it if we wanted to happen quicker, but totally with the staff considerations as to their own time. But I support it as it is.
Thank you. Hearing some of the concerns and the willingness to delay it, then I'm going to offer a friendly amendment that staff report, provide this report for the Committee of the Whole on the Economic Development and Downtown Revitalization in January of 2021. So that would, it's a friendly amendment if you, just to provide a timeline for it to be reported back in January of 2021 for the Economic Development Committee of the Whole. So if the mover and seconder are in favor.
Art, all those in favor? Oh, is there? I'm sorry, my apologies. Councillor Wilson first. Councillor Patterson can speak if she wishes, yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. By having that amendment to January of 2021, it does, I guess what I'm inquiring is you looked into this in some detail. You looked at other locations, and did you, and our Director of Deb Tardif, and that you talked about it. I'm just wondering, like as Councillor Chandler said, if it could be done in a low cost with our sign shop and everything for Parksville 75th, I'd be more in favor of having it this year rather than next year. So can I get a little bit more input from staff, from Mrs. Tardif? Or can you answer any more questions?
Well, I can tell you that any time that I think it's going to be really quick, it always seems to take forever to get done. So I don't have an idea at this point in time whether it in fact is something that is that easy to do. It looked very easy to me to have done, but it depends on how big we want to make it and how fancy. I'm waiting.
If I may, Your Worship.
You may.
I think it's actually as simple as taking one of our existing benches, flipping it around, turning it around on that same pad so that the view is behind. And then maybe we could look at some signage that just says #Parksville, which would be next to nothing other than some staff time.
Yes, please.
If I may, Your
You're
Worship.
dying to say something.
I am dying to make a suggestion for Council's consideration. We have a new committee which is meeting next week on parks and open spaces. We also have a new manager of parks and facilities. And if I might make a recommendation that perhaps staff can work through that committee and present some options to that committee, and then something suitable can be very quickly brought back to council with a budget and some ideas for locations.
Okay. Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Come on.
Let's go in turn here. So thank you, Kiva, or Mrs. Kaler. That's exactly what I was going to say, that Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Fraz are on the committee for parks, and art and open spaces, etc. So this is the time that it could be brought forward.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering if you could please remove your friendly amendment at this point in time.
Okay, we'll let the person that made it.
I'm just surprised how quickly this went from going that this is
This was a simple thing.
It's too much and it's not something that's needed right away to let's do it right away. If the aim is to get it done for the 75th anniversary, we have a committee that's working on that. We're going to hear a report for them shortly. If it's a simple, easy thing to do, I don't see why it can't be rolled into part of their efforts as well. Otherwise, if it's not a simple thing, we have a committee of the whole that we're looking at. I think this aligns very well into a piece where we can report on it and make a recommendation to council from that point. I think the motion as it stands, I would support, and that is worthy as it is. Otherwise, I don't see the need to rush it right now. I think it's a great idea, but we could survive one more season until getting it done, if that's what it required.
Okay. Councillor Wilson and Councillor Patterson, and then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, the idea of it being brought up at our 75th meeting, select committee might be an idea that we could discuss, because we may have a little bit more money in the budget depending upon. But then, of course, that could also follow your meeting, the committee that you have with the parks. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd prefer not to have this die on today and put forward to 2021. So I'm requesting a deferral till after the Parks and Open Spaces meeting and the Parksville 75th meeting next week.
Seconder on the deferral. Councillor Chandler. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Deferral's carried. All right. Mayor Krogh sits beside me at the regional meetings, and his point is always the least expensive items on the agenda usually take the longest. So far, he's been right. All right, notices of motion. Does any member of council have any new notices of motion for next meeting? Okay. We're off to a good start on that. 75th birthday update. I'd like to introduce June Beeman, Chair of the 75th Anniversary Celebration Committee. Mrs. Beeman, would you please provide us with an update on the 75th celebration?
Sure, thank you very much. Glasses on? I'm not really good at public speaking, so I'm going to read. I'm here today to give you a little update on two events, the Passport Program and the Parksville Birthday Party on June the 19th. The Passport, it's going to be a rack-sized card with spaces for 10 stamps from participating businesses. All the businesses will be invited to participate, and March 20th is the deadline for them to respond, and June 1st will be the release. Participants may enter more than one passport, and the passports will be mailed out with the property notices. They will also be available at participating businesses and at the birthday party on June the 19th. There will be a deposit box at the City Hall by the security desk. Businesses will be asked if they would like to donate an item for the prize draw baskets, and that's completely voluntary. 3 passports will be drawn, one for each of the 3 prize baskets on August 22nd. Thanks. Now I'll yell into it. At the Parksville Street Fest event. And the Parksville birthday party on June 19th will be behind City Hall from 5:30 to 7:30. There will be cake and cupcakes, and the Parksville Fire Department will be there with a pop-up water park. There will be 10 interactive booths, and we're just choosing them now. The entertainment's not fully confirmed yet, so it'll be announced shortly. The Seaside Cruisers agreed to change their route slightly, and we'll do a drive-by on Jensen Avenue between 7 and 8:30. And we're asking everyone to bring their own lawn chairs and enjoy the closing event. And Deb Tardif is updating regularly on the city site, and she's got all the information on there. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments to our delegation? Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, through your worship, to the committee and the group and June Beeman. I'm just really happy that you're involved and happy that there's a lot of citizen involvement in this, as well as the committee. Some very well-known event planners and people in that side. It's really important to make sure we do a really good job on this, and so we appreciate your efforts as volunteers, for sure. I mean, that's a huge thing, and this whole city is based on volunteering. it's a really big deal for us to step forward and do stuff like this, so thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Because I don't get to do it publicly enough, I just wanted to echo a lot of what Councillor Chandler has said, and thank you. And our volunteers and the committee as well. And it's true. Parksville is very much made up of amazing volunteers, which you are one of. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'd like to thank you, June, and also say that this is a great select committee, lots of super ideas, and it's moving along really well, so everybody can feel rest assured that it's going to be a great event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your report. We'll be looking forward to next month's report, and great job. Thanks to all of the committee. All right, new business. Does any member of council have any new business? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a reminder of the Brant Festival that's coming up from March the 21st, and it runs through to April the 19th. We have a really hard-working committee who have put together a really great program of, I think, 20 events that will happen. And this attracts quite a number of people into the community. And just a reminder that the Brant come here to rest and eat, and we should all be very careful not to get too close to them and certainly keep dogs away from them. I've also asked the city to advance $5,000, which is a line item, and so that'll be coming forth in the near future for them so they can continue this great work. Great, thanks.
There's never been a time in my life when I thought I would hear Councillor Greer say he wanted to advance $5,000 as a line item. So, Councillor Chandler, sorry.
Thank you, Worship. Just wanted to bring up a couple of events that are coming up. One of them being May 9th of this year. We have the Food Truck Festival. It's the return of the first Food Truck Fest, so this is number 2. We had a very successful first run at it, and we did have our issues with running out of food and had nearly 7,000 or 8,000 people come into town here, which was a little bit unexpected and maybe even more than that. But at the end of the day, it was a great thing for the town. We're doing it the same weekend, which is Mother's Day weekend again. And I think with having it on that weekend, it tends to be a very busy town with, people can look for different things to do, and to take mom out to try some cool food trucks is a great thing. So we intend to have approximately 20 trucks at this year's event, many vendors, lots more tents, and lots more things going on this year. So I'm really pleased to be just a small part of it, and there's obviously the PCC group is putting it all on, and going to be raising money for a couple of different charities as well within that group. So that's number 1. And then number 2 is one of my charities that I really support and have been involved in for several years is the Tour de Rock, and that's a near and dear one to me. I've dealt with from the very beginning stages when it was Camp Good Times, and that was in Shawnigan Lake, and had a lot of involvement there 15, 20 years ago. And so this year I'm pleased to say that we have Baconfest 2020 coming to town, and that's going to be October 3rd, which coincidentally is the day just prior to the team arriving from Tofino after they do the flip around. They'll have already been here on the Thursday the 3rd, or Thursday the 1st, I guess, probably. They'll have done their regular go-through, and then they carry on and ride up to Tofino and Uculet and all that. So anyways, that will be our highlighted charity for that event as far as my organization of it, and that should be a lot of fun too. We'll have more food trucks involved in that, and lots of bacon-related things. So thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Patterson is next on the list.
Thank you, Worship. Last month I took in a couple days with the Parksville Qualicum Beach Tourism Association, and one of the items was working towards a tourism master plan. So I wanted to mention it because there's been a lot of talk around the table tonight and that too, and with one of the motions, and Councillor Fraz was in attendance as well. So it was a really good workshop. Talked about community involvement and that too, because a lot of the communities in our area don't necessarily realize what we do and how much of an economic benefit tourism brings to the community. So it was kind of interesting. Well, it was very interesting. And transportation, environment, and business sectors. So I just wanted to touch base on that. And I'm not going to steal the mayor's thunder or anything, but with the Parksville Chamber of Commerce, he did a ribbon cutting. So I'll let you speak to that as well. Nada. Because I had to dash, so I'm not sure if there was more conversation and everything afterwards, but it's really nice to see a building that's been empty for such a long period of time. I can't remember the last time someone held a lease there, so it's a very positive thing, and the economic, or the director from the Chamber of Commerce is in the audience once again, so I just wanted to pass on thanks, and really looking forward to seeing everything occurring in that building, which is on the Alberni Highway, right next to the radio station, and has multiple partnerships and people working towards business startups, and has already hired quite a few people and has had a grant opportunity as well that's been fulfilled. So thank you.
Thank you. And yes, it was a very successful opening, to be congratulated to the Chamber of Commerce and all the other partners that are involved with it. It's quite an array of local groups between here and Qualicum Beach. The Oceanside Initiatives, I was very, very impressed for a number of reasons. Well, first off, to Councillor Patterson's comment, I moved here in 2003, and that place was empty then, and it's been empty ever since, other than for the odd political office during an election or two. But it looked really good. The people there, there's some great people working there. Had a chance to talk to most of those people, and I'm impressed, and I think that they're going to do a lot of good. They're a place that'll provide an opportunity for a small business to get started where they can't do it because they can't afford bricks and mortar on their own, which I think is a really good idea. So the whole group, the Oceanside Initiatives, are to be congratulated, and the best wishes from the city on that. Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I just wanted to mention this year the Beach Fest committee has come up with its decision for its theme, and it's going to be the Roaring Twenties this year. So you got your bathing suit ready, Mr. Mayor? We're looking forward to that. So the Roaring Twenties is the theme, which is going to play well with our 75th anniversary celebrations as well. And so also they have also commented that this year they also have a record number of sand sculpture applications internationally, that because Parksville has become so famous because of this event. And they're now in the process of selecting those few that are allowed to come to Parksville and put up the sand sculptures. But as I say, it's a truly international event now. And I would like to congratulate once again Beach Fest for an amazing organization committee and the great work that they do for the city. So get out those Roaring 20 bathing suits and join us down in the park this summer.
For fear of scaring the bejesus out of anybody by me wearing one, I think it would be a hoot to do. All right, anything else? Thank you very much for all of that. Special business, but before we proceed to special business, I'd like to remind the public that our next council meeting will be held on Monday, March the 16th at 3 p.m. And I need a mover and a seconder that pursuant to Section 91A of the Community Charter, Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider an item relating to identifiable individuals. That sounds very ominous. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Chandler, second by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor? Thank you. Carried. In 5 minutes, we'll reconvene for a closed meeting. Thank you very much.